Good morning, good afternoon. Thank you so much for joining us today for our user enrichment workshop. That's a mouthful. We're happy that you're here, and in case no one has told you, we are fast approaching year end, and we want to know, are you 1099 ready? We know that this is a hot topic, and we want to make sure that we bring you all the best information with the best team. So we've got two sessions. Today, our session is going to be recorded. So you'll have a recording of this session if you need to leave early, and look for announcements on the second session. We're a little bit unsure of our date yet, so look for an announcement on that. We have a great team with myself today. I don't do this by myself. I always have a great group of, in this case, ladies with me. So today I have Gerthia Gales, who is here from our customer experience area. She does a lot with our user enrichment workshops and customer-facing events. Also here is Nancy Rivas. You may know Nancy from the community. She is instrumental in doing all of our customer meetups. I have Rosa, and Rosa, I know I will barbecue your last name, so I'm not going to say it, but Rosa's here from the customer support area. Thank you so much for joining us today. And Sri Gutala is here from product management. Sri and I have worked together for several years now. And Christina Wright is here as the product manager from TaxBandits, and we're happy to have you here, Christina. So this is your team today, and this is what our agenda looks like. It is jam-packed. So we're going to start out with those welcomes and introductions. I would suggest to you, if you want to connect with other folks, you can put your information in the chat. That is certainly one way for you to network since we're not here in person. That's optional if you want to do that. Again, I will remind you that we are recording today. So you will have an option to get to that recording in the slides, and that will be posted on the community. So you would need a community login for that. We're going to kick off with a two-part presentation today. So there's a piece of this that's really around Sage Intacct and getting you ready for 1099s. And the second part of this is our integration with TaxBandits. So we've divided this into part one and part two. Each one of those parts will have a different speaker and a different presentation. So important for you to understand that we're gonna divide this up because we know we have a lot to cover. We don't want to confuse you, but we want to give you all the information that you need. And then, of course, we're going to follow up with an e-filing demo, so you'll know how to get that information e-filed. And along the way, we're going to be asking you to put your questions in the chat, or pardon me, in the questions, and that will allow us to answer them along the way. And at the end, we're reserving some time for open discussion. All right, so are you 1099 ready? And this is the first part of our presentation. So if you could just go back to the previous slide for just a moment. Yeah, so let me just review these really quickly. We're going to talk about configuration. We're going to look at the company and entity setup. We'll look at the vendor setup, updating those transactions, opening balance overrides, and then we're going to direct you to some documentation. So this is really step by step and getting you up to date, because not everyone starts with Sage Intacct at the beginning of the year. You may have started mid-year. You need to know how to get those opening balances in, that sort of thing. So that's what part one is about. Now when we go to part two is really that integration with TaxBandits. So we'll talk about year-end deadlines, about how e-filing has changed and what the benefits are of doing that. And then we'll introduce you to TaxBandits, and we'll then show you a presentation by the TaxBandit team. All right, and it is my honor to reintroduce you to Rosa. So Rosa, I'll let you kick off. Are you 1099 ready?
Perfect. Thank you so much, Linda. Hello, everyone. My name is Rosa. I am currently the lead here in customer support. A little bit of background information. I've been with Sage Intacct for 5 years, and I've worked very closely with 1099s every year, and I've done it all when it comes to 1099. I will go ahead and be demoing a couple items today just to make sure that everyone is ready for 1099s. Just to make sure, is everyone able to see my demo?
Yes, we can see. Yes.
Perfect. All right, so this is Sage Intacct. And one of the first things we're going to go over is just key configurations to make sure that you are set up for 1099s. So the first item that we want to make sure is that you have it enabled if you are issuing separate 1099s per entities. So this is for a customer that has multiple entities, different tax IDs, then you want to make sure you have the setting enabled. I will go ahead and walk you through that. You're going to go ahead and click on the application menu, go to company, click on the admin tab and select subscriptions. We're going to go ahead and scroll down to multi-entity management. And you're going to go ahead and select configure. And you will see that under the 1099 section, there is a checkbox that you can select to issue a separate 1099 per entity. So once again, this setting is useful for companies that have multiple entities, multiple tax IDs, and they need to issue a separate 1099s per those entities. You want to make sure you go ahead and select this checkbox and click Save. So perfect. In that case, if you are going to go ahead and select that checkbox, you want to make sure that all of your entities are set up correctly. So you can go ahead and access the list of your entities under Company, Setup, Entities. And you'll see a list of all your entities, and you can select Edit, and you can insert your federal ID, which is going to be your tax ID. And you can go ahead and insert your legal contact information by enabling legal name and address on 1099s and 1096 forms. When you select that checkbox, it will go ahead and populate the following windows. You can insert your legal name and your legal address information. So this will ensure that when you're issuing your 1099s at the entity level, it's pulling the correct information that pertains to that specific entity. For customers that are only doing everything at top level or do not have multiple entities, this is not needed for you as it will pull the information from your company. Click on the Setup tab and click on the Company option. And it will go ahead and pull the information that you have listed as a legal address on the company configuration screen. So perfect. Another settings that you want to make sure that you have enabled is under Accounts Payable. And you click on the Setup tab, Configuration. We're going to scroll down and we're going to go ahead and go to the 1099 section. And you want to make sure you have enabled 1099 flag override, enable 1099 form and box override, and ultimately enable 1099 e-filing powered by TaxBandit. We'll go ahead and get more into that setting in the next demo, but you want to make sure you have all of those three enabled if needed. What these settings do is that it gives you the access to go ahead and be able to update transactions that are flagged as 1099, and you can go ahead and unselect or select the checkbox within the transactions. And also it gives you the access to go ahead and be able to adjust the form and box override. If you have the incorrect 1099 form or box selected within the transaction, you can go ahead and change that with no issues by having these settings enabled. So perfect. Those are a bit of the key configurations that you want to have enabled, but it's mostly driven based off the vendor profile. So now we'll go ahead and get into the vendor setup. You can go ahead and access your vendors under Accounts Payable, select the All tab, and click into Vendors. So you'll see the list of your vendors. You want to go ahead and select Edit. go into the additional information tab, and you'll see that you'll, under vendor details, have 1099 name, Form 1099. You'll have a link that you could drill into, but you'll also see if currently the vendor is set up already for 1099 form and box, you'll see that information listed. You can go ahead and click on the link if it's not set up, and it'll give you the option to go ahead and fill in that information by selecting a form name, a default 1099 box, initial values for the years, and opening balances as well. So you can click on the drop menu and you can select any of the forms that apply as well as the boxes. And this is a great way to go ahead and update the vendor information, or if it's a newly added vendor that has not been set up yet, this is where you can go ahead and select that information as well. And you can go ahead and click save. And you'll see that it's already pulled up on the screen once it's selected, and you can select save once again. So the next thing we're going to do is, if you want to have an easy way to confirm if your vendor currently has 1099 information inserted, is by creating a custom view. What we can go ahead and do to create a custom view is selecting on Manage Views and select Create New View. When you create a new view, what we want to make sure and to include, so on the view you can see all the 1099 information, is making sure we have the vendor ID selected, the vendor name, the 1099 name. We want to make sure we have tax ID, Form 1099 box, and Form 1099 type. You also want to make sure that you're including the vendor address to make sure that that information is populated for the vendor. And you can do that underneath the contact. You can go ahead and select address line 1, state, zip code, city, and perfect. That's all you'll need to go ahead and see the vendor information as well as their address and their 1099 information. So we're going to go ahead and select the next option here on the right side. I'll take us to step number 2. So there's a way that you can go ahead and select a column sequence, which if you want to go ahead and see the 1099 information right underneath the vendor name, you can go ahead and move around the boxes to customize that view. You can also select filters, which in this case, it will not be necessary, as well as sorting your results. That's not necessary. And ultimately, you want to go ahead and name your view. So I currently already have a view created, but just for the demoing, you can go ahead and select 1099 view. And this deploy option will, if you select it, that will make sure that everyone within the company can go ahead and run the view. And if you don't select it, that just means that only you, the person that created the view, will be able to access this. So I'll go ahead and click save. All right, perfect. So we created the custom view. So now we're going to go ahead and apply the custom view so it can go ahead and be set on the vendor lister. So here on the upper left corner, for me, it says all. For some people, it'll sometimes say nothing selected. It just depends. And we'll go ahead and select the view that we just created, 1099 view. So perfect. Now you can see the vendor ID, the 1099 name, the form 1099 type, form 1099 box, tax ID, and their address. So as you can see, some of my vendors do have the 1099 information populated and other vendors do not. So I do recommend for our customers to go ahead and create a 1099 view within their accounts, and they can go ahead and just confirm that any vendor that's needed to be set up does have that information. And also something that's useful with this view is that you can go ahead and export it into CSV. And it'll go ahead and open an Excel for you. And you can make the necessary changes. Let's say if I want to go ahead and add the 1099 information for my vendor on the second line, I can easily insert the form 1099 form type as well as the box, save and re-upload it on this screen, and it'll go ahead and update those vendors. So that's a good way to do that if you have to update multiple vendors at the same time. So perfect. Now that we've gone through how to confirm if your vendor is set up properly for 1099s, we're going to go ahead and get into updating transactions. So if the vendor is not set up for 1099s and let's say we update them today, that means that all of the transactions that have been created for them throughout the year are not marked as 1099able. So we want to go ahead and make sure we update those transactions. So when you're running your 1099 reports and you're also filing the forms, that all of those transactions are included. So we can go into accounts payable, click into bills, and you'll see a list of all your transactions. I have two sets of examples. You can see I'll click view. This vendor currently does have the 1099 information populated. And if you click on show details at the line level, you'll see the form type as well as the box information. So this transaction would appear on my 1099 report and would also appear on the 1099 form when printed or e-filed. If I go back into the lister, I have another example. If I select view on this specific transaction, you can see that the 1099 box is not selected. And if I click on show details, there is no 1099 type or box selected. So this means that my vendor was not set up for 1099 when these transactions were created and do need to be updated. So what are the easiest ways to do that? So we do have an option that prompts you through the UI. So I'll go back to my vendor lister, accounts payable, vendors, and if I select edit next to a vendor that does have the 1099 information already populated, let me select the correct vendor. If you go to the additional information tab once again, you click on the Form 1099 link. And if you need to make a necessary change, let's say here currently the box is set to number 3, I need to set that to 1. So then I'm going to go ahead and change, select save, and select save again. You see that this confirm 1099 update window appears. How do you want to apply updates? Option number 1, update all transactions for this vendor for the current year only based on modified 1099 information. So this means that it will only update all of the transactions that are currently already enabled for 1099. As you can recall, on the transaction I showed you earlier, the 1099 box was selected and the information was populated. Those are the only transactions that could be applied to the specific configuration that we're looking at now. If that transaction is not marked as 1099able, this window will not update those transactions for you. So once again, this is only for transactions that are already marked as 1099able. And this will only update all of the transactions for the vendor in the current year. The second option is update all the transactions for this vendor for the current and prior year based on modified 1099 information. And the last one, which is don't update the previous transactions. So we can go ahead and click save, and it'll go ahead and update the information for my vendor. Now it's showing box 1. So that is useful, once again, for transactions that are already marked as 1099able and you need to make a necessary update to the 1099 information. Another option that we have is that you can manually reclassify these transactions. So if we go back into accounts payable, bills, and you select edit. So to be able to reclassify a bill, you do need to enable the setting within your AP configuration, and you do need to have the proper permissions to reclassify bills. So as an end user, if you're not seeing the option to reclassify, which will be located on the upper right corner, make sure that you have the proper permissions and the setting is enabled within your AP configuration. So I'm going to go ahead and select the reclassify option. When you reclassify a transaction for 1099 purposes, you can unselect or select the 1099 box. You could change the form type, and you can just simply select post. And it went ahead and updated the transaction for me. So being able to reclassify transactions is if you have a small amount of transactions that you're willing to manually update. It's not as useful as if you have multiple transactions. Let's say you have 10 or 12 transactions that you need to update, but say they're currently not selected as 1099able at the moment, and you want to make sure all of those transactions are updated. Then the third option we have, which is personally my favorite, is the import option. So what we went ahead and do to download the import file, you go into Company, Import Data. We're going to scroll down to Accounts Payable. So set up AP Master List, Open Bills and Adjustments, and you'll see an option that says Vendor 1099 Transaction Update. So we're going to go ahead and download the template. And here it is. So as you can see, it's a very straightforward template. I know that a lot of our import templates are not as simple as this one, and this is why I personally really highly recommend to use the import file. It's a lot more easier, and it's a great way to ensure that all of your transactions are being updated. And the fact that if you need to update the 1099 information or you need to add 1099 information to the transactions. So going down each column, you can see for column B, this is vendor ID. So that's where you'll insert the vendor ID that's associated to the vendor, which you can find under Accounts Payable, Vendor. You want to insert the vendor name. You want to insert the 1099 name if it's different from the vendor name. If the vendor name and the 1099 name is the same, then you do not need to fill in this box. Then we have column E, which is the default 1099 type. This is where you will insert the form name. As you can see, we have a list of the valid values, which is the NEC, MISC, RS, PATR, and etc. So then the next field will be 1099 box. This is where you insert the number of the box that you want to select, which can be 1, 2, etc. And then the next column, which you need to pay close attention to, is column G, updating the transactions. So there are 3 values that you can insert, which is the letter Y, the letter N, and the letter A. So the letter Y will update transactions for the date range if they are selected as 1099 already, which means these transactions are currently selected as 1099able already, and you simply want to update the values. The letter N is to not update any of the transactions for this vendor, and the option A, which is to update all of the transactions, regardless if it's 1099 option is selected or not. This is the best option to update transactions for a vendor that was not set up as 1099able at the beginning of the year. And now you're going back and you need to make sure that those transactions are updated. So just because we're demoing, I did have a saved Excel file. So let me go ahead and pull up the file I have with all the filled in information. So as I showed you earlier, I did have examples of transactions that were not marked as 1099able. So if we click view, I have these 3 transactions for this specific vendor that I recently did. I recently added the vendor, I created the transactions. The vendor was not set up for 1099. So as you can see, the transactions are not marked. So what I'm going to go ahead and do is use that Excel file to update these transactions. And I want to show you how at the moment they do not show up as 1099able. Let's go into Company, Import Data, scroll down to Vendor 1099 Transaction Update, and I'm going to go ahead and import my file now. So then I'm going to go ahead and choose that file, which is right here. Let me make sure I have it. And the date format, which is month, date, year. And I'm going to go ahead and import, selecting the button. And perfect. This is what we want to see. I was able to successfully import one vendor 1099 transaction update. So let's go ahead and confirm that. I'm going to go into accounts payable, bills. So I intended to update the transactions for this specific vendor. Let's go ahead and click view. And now they do show up as 1099able and the form information is now populated. So once again, those are the three options that you can go ahead and use to update transactions that are currently not marked as 1099able. Just to go down the options is once again through the vendor prompt, which was under accounts payable, vendors. When you select edit and you make any updates to a vendor that is already marked as 1099able, it'll give you that vendor prompt. Then you have the option to manually reclassify bills, which is simply clicking edit, reclassify and making changes. And lastly, the import option, which is downloading the import file, adding the vendor information, and making sure that you are setting up the proper information as far as, once again, the three options, which is update the current transactions, update all the transactions regardless if it's marked as 1099able or not. And also within that file, I want to make sure that I mention that you also have to enter a date range. So that would be column H and I. So from date to date, I wanted to make sure I updated all the transactions for 2023. So I did January 1st to December 31st of 2023. So what this file does is that it will go ahead and update all the transactions based off a bill date. So if the bill date is within this time period, then it will go ahead and update those transactions to mark as 1099able. So another item that we wanted to go through is opening balances. This is great if you don't want to deal with updating transactions manually and you just simply want to import the opening balances for that specific vendor, then you can go ahead and do that. If you track 1099s outside of Intacct, if the 1099 report is off and you want to make a direct change on the balances, or if you were implemented mid-year and you need to book an opening balance entry for that vendor. So it takes us back to accounts payable, vendors. If you select edit, additional information, you click on the Form 1099 link. These are the opening balances that you can select, and these are the boxes. You could do it for box 1, 2, 3, 4, etc., depending on the form type that you're selecting. So one of the ways you can go ahead and do this is manually inserting an amount. So let's say I want to go ahead and insert an opening balance for this specific vendor. I go ahead and select the amount. If it's a positive number, it will increase the value for that vendor. And if you need a decrease, then you would have to insert a negative value, which would be that negative line. So I'll go ahead and simply save, and it will save again, and that opening balance will be saved for that vendor. And we also do have an import file to be able to update the balances if you have multiple vendors that you need to update at the same time. So we'll go ahead and back to company, import data. We're going to scroll down to the AP master list, and we also have a vendor 1099 opening balance. So let's go ahead and download the template for that. So here is a template, also very straightforward. So what information is required is the vendor ID, the vendor name, entity. So this is only for customers and environments that have the entity to issue separate 1099s per entity. So if you do have that feature enabled or that setting within the multi-entity management, then you do need to designate the entity that you want this opening balance to pertain to. It could be possible that the vendor is used within multiple entities, but can have different values within each entity. So if you do have that setting enabled, you do have to specify which entity the opening balance pertains to. If you're doing everything at top level, or if you do not have multiple entities, in this column, you can simply leave it blank. It does not pertain to you. Then the next column is Form 1099 type, which is the form type, the Form 1099 box, which is where you insert the number value, and then the amount. So I do have a file that's already created. Let me go ahead and pull that up. So I want to go ahead and update the values for this specific vendor. So it's for, I inserted the vendor ID, the vendor name. I do not have the multiple entity 1099s setting enabled, so I leave that blank. I insert the form type, the box number, as well as an amount of 5,000. So let's go ahead and import this file. So we go ahead and select the import option. We're going to go ahead and select the year, which in this case is 2023. I'm going to go ahead and choose the file. All right, perfect. And I'm going to go ahead and import. And great, I was able to successfully import the opening balances. So let's go ahead and review that. We're going to go into accounts payable, vendors, and I did it for this specific vendor. We're going to go ahead and click edit, additional information tab, click on the Form 1099 link, and there's the $5,000 opening balance that I imported for this vendor. Another thing to keep in mind is that if you want to go ahead and update the 1099 information for a specific vendor, and you're noticing that the changes that you're making are not applying, it could be possible that you have a specific type ID associated to that vendor. So that means that you have created a type ID with 1099 information. Instead of manually inserting the form for each vendor, you can create that type ID and add that 1099 information. So instead of going through the Form 1099 link, you could just associate the vendor type, the type ID, and that'll ensure that it pulls whatever's associated to that type ID. And that's just a lot of the times we see on the support end, customers are having issues updating 1099 information. It's always good to be mindful that you do not have a type ID associated. And if you do, you can simply remove it, add the information through the Form 1099 hyperlink, and it'll go ahead and save. So lastly, I do want to go through the 1099 report. You can access that through accounts payable. On your third column under reports, you'll see 1099s and you select report. So you want to go ahead and run it for the calendar year if that applies. As you can see, January 1st of 2023 to December 31st of 2023. You can select specific vendors, or you can run it for all vendors as well as employees. You can group by vendor and employee, 1099 category, or none. So 1099 form type, you do need to select a form type. In this case, I have all of them, but if you're looking for a specific type, you can just do specific items as well. Transaction information, 1099 only, or if you want to show all or non-1099. This is useful if you want to get an idea and make sure that all transactions are marked as 1099able. You can start off by running the non-1099. It'll pull up all the transactions that are not marked as 1099able, and you can confirm in that sense if it needs to be updated or not. Or also, if you just only want to focus on 1099 transactions, you can filter by that option, or you can show all, which will show if it is marked as 1099able or not. You can also ensure to click the show minimum eligible amounts only, which will be the $600 and up. You can also decide to run it in summary or detail, exclude credit card payments, or include bills paid via credits in advance. So I'll go ahead and click view. So I ran it to only show 1099 transactions. So as you can see, these for the first vendor, those are that's the vendor that I updated via import. And now those transactions are marked as 1099able and are showing up on my report. You can also see that the initial value, which is the opening balance that I imported for 5,000, is showing up on the report, and that's how it shows up as an initial value. And you can just see other items. You can see the specific 1099 category, the amounts, the tax ID if there was one applied, and the bill numbers and the vendors. So that is all for me today. I'll go ahead and give it back to you, Linda. Thank you, everyone.
All right. So I think there were a couple of slides, Scarthea, that you wanted Rosa to go back and cover. Is that correct?
Yes, ma'am. Let me just take back the screen share. Give me 1 second.
Okay. All right. That's perfect. So Rosa, I think you just covered the world there. There was so much information, and we appreciate you going through that. For those of you who were asking to slow down a little bit, as you can see, we have a lot of information to cover. Remember that you will be getting a recording of this, so you can go back and listen to it and run that at your own speed. So Rosa, would you like to speak to this, these couple of slides?
Absolutely. So preparing for 1099 season. So you want to make sure you are prepared in advance. So just like I just displayed, you want to go ahead and run the 1099 reports regularly throughout the year. You want to go ahead and create all reports and views needed. As shown, you can create a custom view within your vendor lister and confirm that your vendors do have 1099 information set up. You want to go ahead and perform monthly vendor and bill audits to confirm 1099 selections are accurate. Make sure to update bills, vendors that month to avoid mass updates or reclassifications, and view vendor 1099 contacts. You also want to make sure that you purchase forms in advance from our Checks and Supplies Center on Sage Intacct homepage, because we only do align with the forms that are purchased directly through the Sage Intacct Checks and Supply Center. Also set up the necessary location groups for printing when there are shared federal IDs, and utilize checklists to ensure all 1099 duties are completed throughout the year and during 1099 season. So as mentioned, options to update the vendor 1099 settings or bills. You can manually update the vendor record and select the prompt when saving. Note that the prompt only updates the form box where there is an existing 1099 flag equals true. So that is what I walked you through when you go through the vendor lister, you select edit, and the vendor already has 1099 information populated, and you make a change, that window, that vendor prompt will appear for you to be able to update the transactions. You can also utilize the 1099 transaction update import to update all of the transactions that are already flagged as 1099 or need to be flagged for 1099 for the first time. A reminder that update all transactions column, N equals no, Y equals yes, and A equals all. You can manually update vendor balances directly on the vendor record, and you can manually reclassify transactions. Reclassification rules apply for all lists of reclassification rules. You can go ahead and see that on our help topics.
Thank you so much, Rosa. Again, just lots of information there. I would encourage you, again, to utilize the documentation, go through and look at things in the doc that will help you have a plan. Make sure that you're coordinating that plan with others on your team to make sure that the left hand knows what the right hand's doing, so to speak. So Rosa, we'll save some time at the end. I know we'll have a few questions for you then. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. Thank you, everyone.
And now I'll pass it to Christina. Christina is with TaxBandits. I got to meet her yesterday for the first time. Thank you so much for coming back today and delivering part 2 for us.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. Are you able to hear me okay?
You're fine, and I can see you fine.
Perfect, thank you so much. I am so excited to be here with everyone just to help our viewers stay up to date on the latest IRS changes, the latest e-file requirements. And for anyone that's not familiar with TaxBandits, just a quick intro, we are an IRS authorized e-file provider. We have over a decade of experience. We're SOC 2 certified, and with TaxBandits, you can easily e-file forms with the IRS, the SSA, and the states to maintain compliance. We support a wide variety of 1099s as well as other year-end forms. The end of the year can bring about a lot of heightened stress for many businesses, as there are a variety of e-file requirements and other payroll and submission requirements at the end of the year, whether it's employment filings, payroll filings. There are multiple deadlines on January 31st, 2024. One of the most common IRS filing obligations for businesses of every size is the 1099 series. The 1099 series is a collection of information returns that are used to report a multitude of different payments made throughout the course of doing business. The most commonly filed 1099 forms include the 1099 NEC that's used to report non-employee compensation, and the 1099 miscellaneous used for reporting miscellaneous income. Effective January 1st, 2024, the IRS will no longer accept anywhere near as many paper forms as in previous years. The e-file threshold has been drastically reduced, and businesses will only be permitted to file fewer than 10 paper information returns with the IRS for the 2024 calendar year. Businesses filing 10 or more information returns collectively will be required to file electronically. For example, if you're filing 10 W-2s and 10 1099s, that is 20 information returns, so e-filing would be required. Compared to the previous threshold of 250 forms of any type, this is a dramatic reduction that will affect even the smallest of businesses. While the initial shift may seem stressful, there are so many benefits to e-filing. Eliminating paper filing from your client or your business workflow allows e-filing to streamline accuracy, efficiency, and security. Features like automatic calculations, IRS business rule audits, TIN matching, and USPS validations improve your accuracy. 21% of paper tax forms have errors, while less than 1% of electronic forms have errors. This is why 93.3% of information returns are already being filed electronically. In terms of efficiency, it takes an average of 4 weeks for the IRS to process a paper return. Not only is that inefficient, but waiting a month or more on information returns to be accepted or rejected without any notification sets a business up for non-compliance issues. The processing time for e-filing is as little as 24 to 48 hours. And with TaxBandits, you'll have access to view the status of your forms at all times. You'll also receive automatic notifications once the IRS has processed your forms. Now, in terms of security, paper tax forms contain personal identifiable information that's vulnerable at every stage of the filing process. Whereas with e-filing, there are multiple security measures in place. TINs and other personal identifiable information are masked for security. TaxBandits is IRS authorized, SOC 2 certified, and our servers are continuously monitored for threats. And our direct integration with Sage Intacct also allows for a secure transfer of all sensitive data. Now, as mentioned, the IRS has set new e-filing requirements. During the 2024 calendar year, businesses will face mandated e-filing for 10 or more information returns, and this does apply to tax year 2023 information returns, including the information returns that have a deadline of January 31st, 2024. But thank you all so much. Thank you, Linda. I'm going to go ahead and turn it back over to you.
Thank you so much, Christina. We are so happy to have you in our partnership. And now I will turn it over to Shri. And Shri is going to do part 2 of part 2, which is the integration with TaxBandits.
Thanks, Linda. Can you hear me?
I can hear you fine.
Okay, great. Hi, I'm Shri Gutala. I'm product manager on the AP team. And can we go to the next slide? Before we go ahead, before we jump into the demo, I wanted to give an overview of the integration, how the integration looks like. So on the sales side, we have the same process which Rosa showed earlier in the demo. So we go ahead and create the vendors and tag them with the 1099. And we go ahead and again mark the transactions, the bills with the 1099 flag. And we have all the reports on the 1099 side. We run these reports and review the reports. Once that is done, which is pretty much similar to the manual filing, the e-filing process allows us now to click on a specific activity for e-filing and transmit this information to the TaxBandits. So on the TaxBandits side, we create a TaxBandits account, and then just like Christina mentioned, there are additional validations which help us to make sure that the information is compliant with the IRS. And then we can transmit to the IRS and state, and also it allows additional services such as distribute recipient copies. So that's a quick overview. I'll jump into the demo part now. Okay. Are you able to see my screen?
Yes,
Okay.
I can see it fine. Thank you.
Okay. So first we'll start with a couple of configuration options that are needed to enable e-filing. The first one is under company subscriptions and search for cloud. And make sure that this specific one, Sage Cloud Services, is turned on. This is the underlying platform which we use to transmit information from Sage Intacct to TaxBandits. This is free of cost. Go ahead and turn this on. And the next configuration option that needs to be set is under accounts payable. Go to accounts payable setup and configuration. Search for 1099. Once the Sage Cloud Services is turned on, you'd see this additional option, which is called Enable 1099 e-filing. Go ahead and turn this on. And if you see the question mark, when you click on this, it actually gives a lot of information about pricing and terms and conditions. Also, this link, I find it very helpful. It gives instructions on how to set up e-filing and how to videos and quick FAQ kind of questions. So once that is turned on, the last activity is to make sure that the user has the necessary permissions. Go to company and roles. My user, for instance, Emma, has been assigned to admin role. So I'll go ahead and check the permission set under accounts payable. Search for 1099 again and make sure that this 1099 report is turned on. Once these three configurations are done, then we should be able to see a specific activity called 1099 e-file submissions. So before we go ahead and run this e-file, let's check the vendors and the bills. I've created a couple of vendors for demonstration purpose. This particular vendor is already tagged with the 1099 form miscellaneous. And I've already created a couple of bills for today. So I've created a few bills tagged with the 1099 flag. So now we can go ahead and run this e-file submissions report. I'm going to run for the year 2022. So when we launch this screen, it actually displays all the batches that have been already submitted. Sorry. So let's go ahead and create a new e-file submission. Click on the button Add and select the time period. And similar to 1099 reports, it gives these additional filters where you can select a specific vendor or for all the vendors. Let's select the vendor that we created for. And we can run this report either at the top level or entity level. I've created the transactions at entity 100, so I'm going to enter the entity 100. And we can select the form, miscellaneous, and click on e-file. If you're doing it for the first time, here you can see already my TaxBandits account. I've already linked it to the Sage Intacct, but for the first time, this would be blank. You would have to click on change account, and that would take you to the TaxBandits portal. And there you can go ahead and create the TaxBandit account, and that it automatically gets linked to your Sage Intacct. And this screen, when we click on this, it actually displays the summarized payment amount per vendor. Here we have the options of e-filing and download file. So we can go ahead and download the file and review the transactions, or we could also download the file and directly import it. But let's go ahead with the e-file option for demonstration purposes today. So now let's go ahead and refresh. So as you can see, we just created a new batch, and it's this column batch ID is empty, but we can see the status column here. So it shows in progress when it is still getting transmitted to TaxBandits portal, but for all the forms which have been in submitted state, you can see the submitted state. It also allows you to if you have any errors in the vendor ID or whatsoever, we can correct it and resubmit it as well. Let's give it a minute. Or let me launch actually TaxBandits. So when you click on the batch ID, it takes you to the TaxBandits website. Okay, so we come over here and click on Action Continue. It displays all the forms which are in process. So we just created a couple of forms right now. So go ahead and select that. And as you can see on the right-hand side, it also gives you these optional services. So we can do federal e-filing, state e-filing. Also, it allows you to go with these optional services, postal emailing, and you can provide online access. So let's go ahead and click on Continue. And here we can review all the information which we submitted. And click on Continue again. And this is the payment information. So here we can see the charges. I'm using my demo account, so I would not be charged anything, but otherwise, based on the number of filings, it would display the amount that needs to be paid. So go ahead and click on Complete Order and Confirm and Transmit. And then it gets, here you can see it got successfully submitted. So let's go back to the home screen where you can see all the statuses of the forms. So here we can see all, this is like a consolidated list. So you can see all your total transmitted forms which have been accepted, which have been rejected. You can also preview, you can make any kind of edits. So this gives this consolidated view. Go back and see, do a refresh on this. And you can see the status changes to submitted. And I think with that, yeah, that's a simple end-to-end demo of the integration. I'll pass it back to you, Linda.
Thank you so much, Sri. It's interesting how we can take data so easily from Sage Intacct into another solution that makes it so simple and easy for us to do these types of integrations of data. I'm always even though I've seen it many, many times, I'm always excited to see when that information moves over. And I think about the accuracy and the time that that saves for everyone. There are many resources for you to take advantage of. I want to share some of those with you now. And also, we've gotten lots of questions. So some of those questions may have already been answered, but if they have not been, these are some areas where you can find FAQs and answers to questions as well. You've seen Shri and others in software search for things using our Intacct Help Center. I use this all the time. I put in a keyword. It gives me the information that I need and also provides me links, hyperlinks to other topics that are related. And that's important because sometimes you don't find the actual answer that you need in what you're reading the first pass. So always look at those additional topics. The second place that you can go to is there are articles and postings in the community. And again, if you're not familiar with the community, that's your one-stop shop. When I have a question or I'm looking for something, I usually start in the community. You're going to find things there that are going to help you around 1099s. And then there's also courses in Sage University. So if you're wanting something more formal, more structured, you want to, watch something that an instructor has delivered, you can look in Sage University for 1099 courses. Now, I'm a big proponent of trying to do my own troubleshooting if at all possible. Sometimes you just can't come up with the answer and you need to dig a little bit deeper, or as I say, you need to phone a friend. However, in the Sage Intacct Help Center, there are places where you can find topic-based information. So I know Rosa went through preparing for the 1099 season, the step-to-step guide to 1099s, how to troubleshoot. Sometimes it's something really simple. You've looked at it 100 times, but you just missed it. Look at that troubleshooting. Tie out that 1099 report with the 1099 forms. And then being able to order those forms that are compatible with Sage Intacct. So those are areas in the Help Center. There are also knowledge-based articles, and these are helpful as well. If you have that question, pretty much a given that somebody else has had that question as well. So there's some 1099 FAQs, frequently asked questions, how to update transactions, the form type, and the box via the CSV import. So you saw some of that updating that Rosa was doing. Setting your 1099 printer settings. Oh my gosh, how many of us have struggled with printers and getting forms to print correctly? So any tips or tricks to set up the printer would be there. And then getting filing resources from TaxBandits. So I've got the Sage Intacct side, but I need some help on the TaxBandit side. So they too have free resources for you. They have a blog. What a novel idea. The TaxBandits blog. So check out the blog. They also have information posted on the YouTube channel. We all kind of go to YouTube for those things that maybe sometimes we're too embarrassed to ask, but we can watch it at our own convenience and we can find out the answer. And then they also have a knowledge base. Make sure that you register your account via the Sage portal, or you can reach out to your account manager and they can help you get started on that today. All right, so as I mentioned, I know we have had lots of questions. I'm sure we still have some outstanding ones. Gerthia, Nancy, do you want to open it up and revisit some of those questions that we've had.
Can you hear me, Linda?
I can.
Excellent. Okay, why don't I turn camera on as well? It's going to be a little strange because Shri and I are in the same room, but we can't have both of our audio on. Perfect. And there's Rosa. Okay. I think we should also have that. Perfect. I just saw TaxBandits come on as well. All right, rapid fire, ladies. You ready? You all did amazing. Thank you so much. First of all, we did get a lot of questions about will we get the presentation? And yes, and you can kind of stop the recording as Rosa went through each step. You can stop the recording as Shri went through her demo as well. So we will send that to you hopefully by end of day. All right, this was during Rosa's presentation. Is entering in a vendor default 1099 box mandatory, or is simply selecting 1099 form type sufficient?
Just simply selecting the 1099 form type will be sufficient.
Excellent, thank you very much. All right, next one. It says, should you be at top level or entity level when running the reports for 1099?
So that does depend. So once again, that takes us to the configuration under the multi-entity management. If you have the option selected to issue 1099s per entity, then you should be running your 1099 report at the entity level. If you do not have that setting enabled, then you can simply run it at top level.
Thank you. When importing opening balances, is the value added to the existing opening balance, if any, or does it replace the existing opening balance, if any?
So when you are importing the opening balances on the import file, you are selecting the specific box that you want to update. So if that box already has an existing value, then it will override the value. But if you're importing multiple values within different boxes, then they will be added.
Thank you, Rosa. Okay, my apologies. I touched my mouse and lost my place.
She's been chasing that mouse all day long. I was on a call with her earlier and she said, I'm chasing my mouse around here. So I think she's been mouse challenged all day.
That's right. Exactly.
And I think the mouse is winning.
The mouse is at 1 point, yes. Okay, I have ordered in the past from the checks and supplies and my forms do not perfectly line up. I have adjusted the printing settings and used shrink to fit and full size and no luck. Can you please advise? I'm gonna say log a case, but Rosa, correct me if I'm wrong.
Absolutely. I would say first, we do have a help topic within the Help Center as well as the Intacct community knowledge articles that go through a very specific line items that you should be checking. It could definitely be doing with your Adobe, depending if you're using that, if you're using Mac or Windows, scaling settings. So it definitely has to meet all the requirements that we have, but yes, log a support case and we can send that your way and walk you through it.
Thank you. Is the date for the import file based on date paid or date entered / billed?
So the import file does go based off the bill date.
Fantastic. Okay. Ooh, I'm going to take a little breath. Rosa, how did you do it so fast? Okay.
5 years of Intacct.
Right? So many years. Okay. Now we're sprinkling in a few more TaxBandit questions. So Christina and team, get ready. Hold on 1 second. That darn
Mouse.
Okay, here we go. What does Sage provide should we wish to file without using TaxBandits? If we wish to e-file directly through the IRS link?
I think I'll take that question. We can still download the data into a CSV file and then re-import it into the IRS. TaxBandit allows you so many options to give that flexibility. You can directly file to state and IRS, and also have these email notifications whenever this state changes. So it gives this additional flexibility. But I would say you can still directly download the file and re-import it into IRS.
Thank you, Shri. How do you set up the vendor's name to include a doing business as name and a 1099 name that are different? What fields are mapped from Sage to TaxBandits? So two-part question.
I think I'll take the question too. We have the printer's name at the vendor record and also a 1099 name. Earlier, last year when we released it, these two, we did not map it to the same, I think, record on the TaxBandit side, but this release, we're going to map the 1099 name as this primary name and the printer's name as the secondary name on the TaxBandit side.
I'm only able to see the 1099 e-file submissions under the entity level, not the top level.
That's, from what I understand, I think one should be able to, unless the user is restricted to entity. So perhaps I would recommend to
Review permissions.
Yeah, view permissions, and if not, file a case.
Okay, here we go. Do you have to create a batch for each entity to file by entity? Or can you create an entity group, including all entities, that would then create the 1099s under each appropriate entity?
We can create an entity group and then select the entity group on the report. If you see the e-filing report, that's possible.
Excellent. Okay. We've had some behind the scenes folks that have also been fantastic in helping us. And I just want to just step away from the questions for a second, because there are a couple of themes happening that we're seeing. So if the team can help, the first theme we're seeing is how do you access the import file for updating transactions? If we could just review that again.
Yeah, absolutely. So you would have to go ahead and do that. And I'm not sure if you want me to share my screen again or not, but
I think that would be great. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, perfect. I can do that. Let me pull that up.
Yeah.
Get Nancy away from that mouse.
I think you might have to give me permissions. Okay, perfect. And let's see. So you would do that from the company checklist. So you go under company, import data, and it brings up a master list. You want to go ahead and scroll down to where it says set up AP master list. From here, you'll see that there is a vendor 1099 opening balances, vendor 1099 transaction update. So these are the two import files. You would go ahead and select template, which will download the CSV file. And once that file is filled in and completed, you would go ahead and select the import option so you can go ahead and submit the file. I also saw that a question that was asked commonly is, does it matter that your periods are closed for the transactions that you're updating? So keep in mind that if you're reclassifying manually on the UI, that the books will need to be open for the period that you're reclassifying. But if you're doing it through the import file, through the vendor 1099 transaction update import file, the books do not need to be opened. The file will simply update all of the transactions, and you do not have to manually open the books, which is another reason why I personally really recommend using the import file. It's a lot more faster, and you don't need to reopen your books, and you ensure that you're updating all of the transactions within a date range, opposed to manually having to click into each transaction and verifying that information. I also saw that there was a question that a vendor was incorrectly selected as 1099able. If that is the case, then what you can go ahead and do is within the vendor profile, remove the 1099 information. And that vendor window prompt will appear with the three options to update current year, update prior and current. or do not update. So then that will also deselect the vendors. If you remove the information and select update the transactions, then it will update all transactions and remove that information.
Thank you, Rosa. This one's going to be for the TaxBandits team. TaxBandit fees. We put that link in the chat, but anything you want to cover on that, Christina?
Yeah, thank you. So just for reference, we do have standard pricing, but Sage customers, their e-filing through that integration get 10% off of the federal and state filing costs, and we have a secure online option for distributing the recipient copies that is also included for Sage customers.
Excellent, thank you so much. Okay, and then the last theme that came up a lot as well was the subscription permissions that Shri went over. Shri, would you mind just doing that one more time?
Okay.
If Garthia can give her the powers, because there were 3 specific screens in 3 different places and 3 different navigations required. I think going over that one more time would be great.
Okay. Can you see my screen now?
Yes.
Okay. The first one is a Sage Cloud Services. So it is under Application Path Company subscriptions, and search for cloud, and you'd see Sage Cloud Services. And this is free of cost. There's no charge for it. So go ahead and turn it on. And the next one is under Accounts Payable. Go to Accounts Payable.
Shri, can I interrupt you for just 1 second?
Yeah.
I just had this thought. When you were sitting on subscriptions for Sage Cloud Services, I could possibly have already turned that on because of bank reconciliations. So for those of you who have already been there, just so you don't get confused, that is the same place.
Yeah, that's correct. So we use Sage Cloud Services for taxes and also bank reconciliation. We also use the same framework for TaxBandits as well. So
and
once
I think in months past, it may have actually said Sage Banking Cloud. So originally, I think that's what the subscription said. So not to confuse everyone, it is Sage Cloud Services. So don't feel like, oh gosh, have I been here before? Yes, you have. The name has actually changed up the subscription. Just wanted to clarify that because I noticed it when you went through the first time. Thank you.
Thank you, Linda, for that. And the second one is under Accounts Payable, Configuration, search for 1099. And you'd see this additional checkbox, Enable 1099 e-filing. And this is where you can actually find a lot of information on pricing, how to set up e-filing, etc. So I really encourage you, if you haven't reviewed these resources yet, please go ahead and check them out. And the last one is about permissions. Go to Company, Roles, and for your specific user, make sure that under AP, you have this permission for 1099 report. Turn this checkbox run for this. So these are the permission sets required. And once that is done and refresh your browser, you should be able to see this specific option called 1099 e-file submissions.
So a good rule there that Shri just reminded us of is if we have some functionality that you hear about or we talk about and you don't see it on the screen, your first reaction should be a couple of things. One, go check your subscriptions. Sometimes you haven't subscribed to something and there may be no charge for it, but you need to activate it. You need to go in and check the box, so to speak. The second thing I learned 13 years ago was go check your permissions. Those permissions can trip you up every time because if you don't have permissions, then you're not going to be able to see things on the screen.
All right, thank you so much, ladies. That was fantastic to review that again. All right, I'm going to jump back in. Just as a reminder, if we do not get to all of these questions, we will respond to you via email with your question and that answer. Okay, if not using TaxBandits, How is an electronic form created manually to e-file with the IRS? I'm going to guess that's you, Shri.
Okay. So if you're not using TaxBandits, you can still download the file and go to IRS and import the file. That is, of course, a little bit of manual effort. But here, if you're using e-filing, you can just click on it and TaxBandits will do the rest of the work for you.
Thank you. How do I add equity comp transactions to the 1099 form?
Is that to Rosa, I believe, then?
Rosa, is that you?
I'm not really familiar with that specific file type. I would recommend to log a case, and we can definitely check on our end to see what's the best way to go ahead and do that.
Thank you so much. Okay, here's a newer question. Can we print forms to mail from TaxBandits?
I would say, and then I'll defer to Christina. Yeah, sorry. Yes, we
No,
can.
that's okay.
I'll let her answer.
No, you're totally fine. Thank you for all the ones you've helped with. But yes, you'll have access to download and print all of the forms that you e-file using TaxBandits, and you don't need special forms to print those. You can just print them on regular printer paper.
Regular printer paper. Imagine that. Okay, fantastic. All right, here we go. Coming back into a few more of these questions. Does TaxBandits offer TIN matching?
Yes, you will be able to complete the TIN matching before you file, and that helps you avoid rejected forms later. It gives you a chance to go ahead and update the names and TINs of the recipients before you file.
Okay. I'm seeing a bill.com potential integration question. I'm going to ask one of the somebody from Rosa's team to maybe take a look at that question specifically. Okay, and okay. Oh, this is a good one. If you miss a 1099 filing after, what do you do?
You can create additional 1099s in TaxBandits at any point. You can either re-import from Sage if there are new forms, or if you need to manually create a quick form in TaxBandits, you can.
Fantastic. Okay. I'm seeing a few repeat questions, and again, yes, there is a fee for TaxBandits. Christina, if there are any other links you want to provide in there, we're providing the one that Shri has had. I'm just seeing that one come up a little bit more. I'm going to skip down here. Okay. Let's see, this one might just need a little clarification. If I did not subscribe to any other Sage Cloud services and select to turn this feature on for TaxBandits, will we be charged for any other features listed that we are not using? No.
It's free of charge.
Yeah, you're just turning on the Sage Cloud services. Okay. And Linda and Rosa, if you guys see another question, since you are not mouse challenged, please pipe in and let me know.
Okay.
Let's see. Is there a way to create a 1099 for an item not generated via a bill? For example, a journal entry.
Not at the moment, at least for a specific journal entry. We know that you can do it through accounts payable. It's also available for employees through time and expense and through purchasing.
Thank you. Okay.
There's one at the bottom here, Nancy. I don't think I heard you say it. Oh, okay. Shoot a monkey. Oh, here we go. If a vendor was paid with check and credit card throughout the year, will the total be reduced by the credit card amount?
So how it works is that if it was paid via credit or advance, it will not appear on the 1099 report as 1099able. So it will not appear on the form, since that doesn't, I believe it's not allowed. It has, if it was paid via credit card or advance, it doesn't meet the regulations for 1099able.
Okay, all right.
I am seeing that there are a few people having issues accessing the site to purchase 1099 forms. I am noticing that it seems to be if you're on a specific browser, which is Edge. So if you are using Edge, perhaps you might have to use a different browser, which is Chrome, which is the most recommended for Sage Intacct. Or if you have any other browser besides Edge, it seems like that specific site or internet browser is having issues with that website. Also, clearing cache and cookies may help, but the website is up and running. I'm currently looking at it now, so it might be a browser issue.
Do you want to just share your screen really quick, Rosa, again? That might also be helpful to show and tell.
While you're doing that, Rosa, there was an update from someone here that says credit card payments are processed by the merchant account, 1099K. Businesses do not need to worry about those. So that's exactly what you were saying.
Correct. Thank you. Great information. And here is the website. So, you know, you could purchase checks through here and tax forms. We do have that specific link. And here are all the available options and pricings. And this is a separate website, and they have a separate support line. So for whatever reason, if you're ordering checks or 1099 forms and you need to contact them, either, you know, for whatever reason, they do have their own phone number as well as where you can contact them directly. I also wanted just to pull up the help center. This is a great place where you can also search, you know, 1099 questions, update vendors, and we have multiple links that you can click on that will show you how to do it manually on the UI. You can do it through the import file. It also shows you how to create that custom view that I walked through. So I do apologize if I went a little fast. I wanted to make sure we had enough time for everything, but you can definitely, the Help Center is beautifully built and it's really easy to understand, which I highly recommend to all of our customers. Even myself, as in the support team, I use the Help Center sometimes. It's really great. We also can go into video library, and we do have really good videos regarding 1099s and how to update those transactions. So I highly recommend for everyone to make their way to the video library and take a look at the recording at your own speed as well.
Great points, Rosa.
And here's the specific 1090 taxes and 1099s, TaxBandit information as well. So it's a really good place, and it's the Intacct Help Center.
And all these links will be provided.
Absolutely.
Yes. All right, let's hit up a few more questions here. Am I wrong in thinking that I had previously seen that the e-file you can download is not in the IRS FIRE format, so you must use an MPP for EMA filing? Is that accurate or inaccurate?
I think I would defer to Christina for that, but I do recall that there's a change in the format with IRS. So we don't support it yet on the Sage Intacct side. We still go with the FIRE format, but there's a new format which is being introduced as of next year, I believe. Christina, do you have any additional information?
I know that they are looking at like an IRS system for e-filing. So we're expecting more updates from the IRS to come on that. But as far as like the e-fileable format, that is a specific IRS format that you're uploading to the FIRE system. So if that's not a format that you have, that would be a perfect example of when you could use TaxBandits to e-file.
Okay, is Intacct compatible with other e-file companies?
I would say right now it's only TaxBandits.
Thank you for confirming. All right, we started with Sage mid-year. Does entering an opening balance for 1099s flow through to AP aging reports?
No, the opening balance is solely for 1099 purposes.
And there's a reason for that. You would want the detail of those beginning transactions. So to Rosa's point, it's a different process, and you want that information for different reasons. So.
Okay, we kind of touched on this, but Christina, you might want to, or there might be like a help link for this from TaxBandits. I'm not sure. Can you explain how to create the report to e-file with the IRS in their IRIS portal?
So that is actually not needed in TaxBandits. When you use that Sage integration, the form details, the payer information, everything just comes over into TaxBandits. It'll already be formatted in the correct format for you to review. And then you just click a couple of buttons. You'll actually click to transmit, and TaxBandits will e-file that form directly with the IRS. So you won't need the e-fileable format using TaxBandits.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Anything else to add? And from Rosa or Shri?
No.
Okay. You have been focusing on bills rather than payments. Shouldn't 1099s be based on payments rather than bills received? Or does Intacct take this into consideration to pick up paid bills only?
Correct. So we do take in consideration, we only pick up on paid bills. So there are situations where there can be a bill within, December and potentially paid within the next year. So in those situations, you would have to manually reclassify since the payment does pertain to the next year.
Thank you. Okay, just when I think I'm getting to the bottom of them, I see like 15 more.
So a repetitive question is, I think they're asking if we have manual, because we also touch based on manual filing and e-filing. They're asking, do we have to do both? No, either you can do manual filing or e-filing. Once you switch to e-filings, you don't have to do the buy these print forms and do the manual filing. Just to clarify on that part.
Okay. Do we need the cloud services in order to e-file with TaxBandits? Yes, you do.
Yeah.
Let's see. And I'm going to rely on Linda and Rosa one more time. Anything else, ladies, you see there? I'll call this one out. Are the form charges per entity, or are all our entities included in the TaxBandit pricing?
Our pricing is per form, so it's not per entity. You can e-file for multiple entities at one time. Our pricing is tiered, so filing for multiple entities at once will actually get you a lower cost per form also.
Thank you very much. Okay.
So Nancy, I think we need to circle back on the last conversation that we had about bills coming in December, being paid in January.
Yes.
That Rosa, that you were talking about regarding a payment in December versus a payment in January and the reclassification. So let's do a little scenario here. The bill comes in, it's dated December 1st. I enter it into AP and I post it. Is that amount going to, and we'll give it the rest of the story. That vendor is a 1099 vendor. So it takes that $100 and it says that $100 is 1099 applicable. Yes? Am I good so far?
Correct.
All right. Now, that sits out there, but it's not going to get paid until January the 10th. What do I need to do because that's not paid? It actually got posted as an expense in December.
So in that case, you would have to manually, so that's where the import file will pick up the transaction, but if it was not paid until January, then you would have to either manually reclassify it to go ahead and carry over to the next month, which would be January.
Okay. And when you say reclassify it, I'm going to play, I'm just going to play this through. When you say reclassify it, are you saying to me that I need to call up the AP bill and reclassify it?
Correct.
And so I'm coaching you or poking at you here. And so that means that I, as a user, have to have permission to reclassify.
Correct.
Because that's permission based.
That is correct. It's
Okay.
permission
Just
based.
I'm trying to tie up all the loose ends because somebody might say, well, I don't see that on the screen. That's because you need to check your permissions.
Yes, there's two permissions as a user and as well as under the AP configuration. Do you allow to reclassify pay bills is a specific setting within the AP
Good
config.
point. Yeah.
So if you do not have that enabled, then it will not show up. Also, if the books are closed, it will not show up. It has to be within an open period.
Okay. All
So
good
there's
points.
3 scenarios. Mhm.
All
And
good
that's a
points.
wrap,
Thank you.
Linda.
All right. Well, thank you all so much. We really appreciate you being here today. We know that you appreciate all this information. Let us know how we can help. We've given you lots of resources. Our team thanks you, and we all thank you for your support of Sage Intacct and TaxBandits. Thank you again for joining us, Christina. We appreciate your partnership. I hope everyone has a great day, and we'll talk to you next time. Bye now.